Tom Staggs left Disney. Everybody needs to run. Disney's gonna crumble. Hey everybody, and welcome to Disney Biz. This is a new series that I wanted to kick off where I can talk a little bit about Disney from a business perspective as opposed to from a guest perspective. You know, a lot of the questions I get are about, our experiences as guests, what we would like to see as guests, sometimes the history or the movies, but I also find the business end of this company really, really interesting just to see how everything operates. And so I figured this could be a little home to talk about news in the Disney business world. And there is some big news to talk about, and this is actually what prompted me to think of the series idea. It was announced last week that Thomas Staggs, the COO of Disney, was stepping down. What does this mean? Should we be worried? What happened? Why did it happen? There are so many questions surrounding it, and there actually aren't a ton of answers. And that's because a lot of this stays secret for the most part. It might not be for years down the line that we get true answers as to why it happened, because people don't want to really burn bridges. But the short of it is he was the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of Disney. Now, this is big news because last year when he got the title of COO, after being the chairman of Parks and Resorts for quite a while, it was sort of understood that by taking the role of COO, he was taking up the mantle to replace Bob Iger in 2018 when Iger stepped down as the CEO of Disney. So essentially, people looked at him taking this role on as being the replacement. He was going to be the guy that they were going to groom to carry on the Disney company into the future. And it made sense to think that because Disney typically hires and promotes from within, and a company as unique and different as Disney is, and especially a company as large as Disney, you typically would want to get somebody who's from within the company to run it. And this is what makes it really interesting and kind of confusing because as far as we know, he was about to be handed the keys to the Disney kingdom and he's turning them down 2 years before he gets them. So it really raises a lot of questions as to why he decided to step down. Now, we have no official answer. Could be a personal reason. Maybe he just changed his mind and decided he doesn't want to be a CEO. Maybe there's something within the company that's forcing him out, or maybe, it looked like he wasn't going to get the position that he wanted. One of the leading rumors going around is that the board of directors over at Disney were still looking at other options for a CEO replacement, which probably made Tom Staggs think that it wasn't such a sure shot that he was going to be the CEO to replace Bob Iger, and that might have prompted him to leave. But we don't really know. And it also seems like Disney doesn't have another natural go-to option for when it comes to CEO. You see, last year when Tom Staggs was looking for the role of COO, knowing that it would be sort of the unofficial way of saying, I'm going to be the next CEO, he was going up against Jay Rizzullo, who was another top executive over at Disney, who also wanted the spot for the same exact reasons. Since Jay Rizzullo did not end up getting the spot, he left the company. And so now these top two choices that Bob Iger was picking between are no longer there. So who do we turn to? The real answer is that nobody really knows, and the common trend going around all these news articles is that we don't have to worry too much because Bob Iger isn't expected to step down for another 2 years or so. So that should be plenty of time to find some sort of replacement. However, it has now opened up and brought up to the forefront the idea of finding a CEO replacement from outside of the Disney company. Now, for some, this is worrisome, and for some, this isn't. And I think the real answer lies somewhere in between. Like I said earlier, Disney is a very big company. They're a very unique company. They have their hands in a lot of very, very valuable IPs. They have Star Wars, they have Indiana Jones now, they have all the Pixar IPs on top of everything that the Disney company has had since the beginning. And they're also in a couple of different fields. Not only are they doing movies and television in the entertainment field, but they're also doing products with their toys. They're also doing books. They also have a music label. They also have their theme parks. And so, whoever's going to lead this company needs to not know all of those inside and out, but have a good handle of how they're different industries and how you need to lead them differently rather than this one single business. And so there are people who are worried that picking somebody from outside of the company means you're going to find somebody who doesn't have that experience, who doesn't know how, Disney as a company functions, and that might be problematic because if you have somebody who, takes the reins to the horse, so to speak, and doesn't know how to ride it, it's going to cause problems. Now, I think the alternative way that we could look at that is that there is a lot of opportunity for new and fresh ideas. You know, the last time we had a CEO step in who was not from within the company was in 1984 with Michael Eisner. Now, Michael Eisner made a lot of decisions over his tenure at Disney as CEO, and I think a lot of people tend to remember the negative ones, especially because they piled up towards the end there to the point where he had to sort of be forced out of his seat. But it is worth remembering that when he and Frank Wells stepped in from outside of the company in the mid-'80s, they made a lot of really dramatic changes that saved the company from being hostily taken over and broken up. You know, I don't know if there'd be a Disney company today if it wasn't for those two outsiders. And on top of that, we saw a lot of interesting changes. You know, that was the moment when we saw new life breathed into animation. That's when we saw the parks expand and grow in so many crazy ways. And that's when we saw them step more into the world of television. And so it's easy to say that Disney as a company today, the Disney company that we know and love, is a result of Michael Eisner. And it is important to remember that he was an outsider when he was given the role of CEO. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that we might have a CEO outside Disney. Now, one of the names floating around right now is Sheryl Sandberg, who is the chief operating officer of Facebook. It's an interesting choice for sure. You don't think of Facebook when you think of creative talent such as Pixar or LucasArts or the movies that we come to know and love from a Disney property, but from a business perspective, it might be a really interesting way to look at it. Disney has some really interesting technology. We've seen things like the Magic Bands, which are new and sort of trying to push the parks industry in a new direction. However, I don't think it is that crazy to say that Disney as an entertainment company is not really on the bleeding edge of technology. I have some pretty strong stances when it comes to Disney as a video game creator, which is to say I don't think they're doing a great job. I don't think they're fully using their IPs, and I don't think they're developing a good long-term strategy for how they could do more with everything that they own. I also think from a television perspective, they're not necessarily on the up and up. I think, ABC doesn't have a ton of huge hits going on right now. You think of something like Lost and how amazing it was and how much of a big cultural event it became, and you don't really see that coming out of ABC these days. And not to mention, Disney's stock dropped, not too long ago because news came out that ESPN subscriptions are going down, and that is a major part of Disney's profits every year. And so, you're going to need somebody who has a very forward-facing look at technology so that they can go up against, this rising trend in cord cutting in cable, which cuts into their television, that, has a very forward-facing look at how you treat the film industry, which is obviously changing with more and more digital technology. And so, and I think it would be better to see somebody who has a pretty progressive look at how video games should be treated. And so I don't think it would be a horrible idea. Obviously, we're never going to really know until something happens. Bob Iger has reiterated that he still plans to step down in 2 years and that there's still plenty of time to find a replacement for CEO before he does. However, there's also been talk going around that, maybe he will be more likely to extend his role as CEO yet again until they can find the perfect person to take the seat. It'll be real interesting to see what the reaction is if that ends up happening, because, then you could make an argument that maybe he did want to hold on to that seat a little bit longer, and maybe that is why Staggs left. But something tells me he is going to step down. They are going to find someone to replace it. I think Bob Iger, unlike Eisner, he just wants to go out on a high note so he could be remembered as the CEO who really took Disney from 100% and knocked it up to 150%. But again, time will tell. This is a story that doesn't, develop over the course of the week. It's going to develop over the course of multiple years, and we're going to see where it goes. But there you go. If you've been reading about Tom Staggs in the news and you didn't know what was going on, that's sort of what's happening there. Obviously, I'll probably bring it up again in the future episodes of this series because it is a big topic to talk about. If you have any thoughts on this, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. If you have any topics that you want me to cover that focus solely on the business side of Disney, I'd also love to hear that in the comments below. I don't really know how frequently I'm going to be making videos about this. It's really sort of decided by how often there's news regarding the company. But I think it could be a fun way to take a look at a company that we all approach from one direction as guests and look at it from another direction. Anyway, I want to thank you all for watching. Whatever you do, make the most of it because it makes it that much better. And I hope to see you next time for the next Disney Biz. Bye, everybody. It's a new series that I wanted to start that focuses on the Disney end of the Disney company. Did I say the Disney end of the Disney company? Wow.